Was the part stereotypical? Was it the kind of part that she wanted? I think that's a two-part answer. Of course she wanted the part, because I'm sure she felt every step up or step forward would get her and her race to another place forward. It's all about progress. And a lot of times progress can be slow. But I don't know if she knew how big it was going to get. I don't think she realized that. Did she think she would win an Oscar? I don't think anybody could have foreseen that.
That I present the Academy Award for the best performance of an actress in supporting roles during 1939 to Hattie Mcdaniel.
The late great Miss Hattie Mcdaniel was a legendary singer, radio performer, TV star and Hollywood actress. Hattie's big break happened in 1920, where she toured with a musical ensemble. She then embarked on a radio career and appeared in over 300 films. Despite the racism and segregation in the United States at the time, Hattie never let this get in the way of her career journey. It's been 81 years to this date in February since Hattie Mcdaniel won her Oscar nomination for Gone with the Wind. Today I speak to her great-grandnephew Kevin J Goff, who has taken the role of carrying on her legacy through documentaries, film and podcasts to educate a new audience on a woman who paved the way for so many.
Hattie was my great-grand-aunt. Her sister Etta, who was also an actress, was my great-grandmother. And so that's how I'm related to Hattie.
And for those who may not know who Miss Hattie Mcdaniel is, which I can't imagine there will be many people that don't, but for those who don't, would you be able to give us a rundown of who exactly she was?
You know, you hear the word triple threat, you know, a performance who sing, dance, act. She was kind of like maybe quadruple. I don't know. She did sing, she did act. She was a musician, I found out later. She was a songwriter. She danced, and I mean, she did a lot. And she took on some issues of her day, of her era, in regards to the barriers of people of color and having dealt with that herself. So she had a lot of irons in the fire. You know, she was the first Black or if you look at person of color to win the Academy Award in 1940 for her role in Gone with the Wind as Mammy. And even before that, she was having success in radio. She was one of the first Black female radio stars. So she had a radio career prior to making it to Hollywood in the 1930s. And she, considering the barriers, she got a lot done during that time.
Yeah, she did. And when we last spoke last week, you said you were the person in your family that's responsible for carrying on her legacy. Talk to me about what the motivation behind you doing this was. Like, what made you want to carry it on?
I remember when I was probably 17 or 18 years old, and I went to visit my father in California because my parents were separated. So I grew up in Texas. So, 10 years went by. I saw my father a couple of times. And here's the moment for me to go to California again, see my dad. It's going to be kind of like this powerful moment. I hadn't seen him a lot. And I get off the plane, and one of the first things he said to me, the first thing was he said that I want to punch him, that I want to hit him. And I was like, what? And I guess he thought maybe I was holding some anger for not seeing him, And the second thing he asked me was, he mentioned that, your aunt, Hattie McDaniel, the Oscar winner, that's part of our family legacy. And I said, yeah. And he said, would you want to carry on that legacy? one day? And I said, absolutely. And that's the earliest memory I had of that question, or even that thought being put into my head of carrying on the family legacy, when I was about 18 years old. And it would be years later before that started to really take root, and for me to understand what that meant and the responsibility of it. And here we are today. I'm sitting here with you. So something must be going right, because I am on your podcast, I'm on your show. So things are looking good.
First, I would like to thank the Academy for showing that it can be about the performance and not the politics. I want to thank Miss Hattie Mcdaniel for enduring all that she had to so that I would not have to.
It's interesting because Hattie was the first African American to win an Oscar, as you mentioned before, and she paved the way for so many African American actors that came after her. Do you think that she gets the accolades that she deserves now for how much of an icon she was?
I think it's kind of like a yes and no. I mean, there are definitely a group of people out there who appreciate her and who remember her contribution. Whenever you're the first at something, it's probably going to be hard. It's going to be a difficult journey being the first at anything. So having that pioneer status, maybe at the time she wasn't looking at it like that. I think when she won that part in Gone with the Wind, she knew it was a big deal. It was going to be the most expensive film ever made. Everybody knew about the book, so it was well known in the entertainment circles. And the fact that she got that part, I knew she had that internal thought, I have to knock this out of the ballpark. I have to really deliver. So she delivered beyond what was on the written page of the script. She put a little more into it. And I think that's what won her the part when she auditioned. She showed up at the audition in full costume, where everybody else showed up in fur coats and trying to impress the producers. Hattie showed up as if she was that character. And she got the part right away. When she was nominated, I'm sure she felt a big responsibility. She mentioned that in her speech. She wanted to be a credit to her race.
This is one of the happiest moments of my life. And I want to thank each one of you who had a part in selecting me for one of the awards. For your kindness, it has made me feel very, very humble. And I shall always hold it as a beacon for anything that I may be able to do in the future. I sincerely hope I shall always be a credit to my race and to the motion picture industry. My heart is too full to tell you just how I feel. And may I say thank you, and God bless you.
I think those words, what she meant by that was, our people have been through a lot, and I want to carry this mantle as best I can and pass it off to the next person, hopefully in good shape or with opening a door here or there. And I think she did that.
Yeah, she did that and more. Did she inspire you to become an actor?
You know what? I think I instinctively, maybe it's DNA. My mother said I came out of the womb performing. I don't know if I came out of the womb dancing. I don't know what that looks like, but I always had that creative thought, creative energy. I was always doing something. And maybe that came from that side of the family, I don't know, but she did inspire me. Once I learned more and more about her, and even as a relative, there was a lot of things I didn't know, but the more I learned about her, it made me appreciate her more, and it made me think, wow, she went through a lot more than I was going through, and she was very successful.
Yeah, compared to what actors go through today and what she would have went through, it's kind of like a complete different, it's almost like a different life. Like, I know acting is a very grueling sport. So she was unable to attend the premiere of the film that she actually won the Oscar for. And it was held in a whites-only theatre. And at the Oscars ceremony in Los Angeles, she sat at a segregated table at the side of the room. Now, I know you mentioned, we mentioned racism and the racism that she would have went through at that time. Can you speak a little more on that?
Of course, she was well aware of the fact that her skin color in society was an issue, and it still is. I mean, I'm sure she was faced with a lot of, and you spoke about a couple of instances right off the bat there. You know, growing up watching her father, who was a Civil War veteran, who had to fight to get his pension after he was injured in the war. And it probably diminished him about to 40 or 50% of his capacity, but he still went out and worked as a laborer after the war. So she was probably watching what he went through and him being denied his pension year after year after year, even though he served his country. And knowing that in large part was based on his color, and probably not receiving the medical care of his white counterparts. So she knew right away, she knew early on, she was getting an education in racism, which is an interesting way to put it, education in racism at that time. But I think that's something that fueled her. You know, when she went on the road as a teenager and performed with her brothers and sister, you know, there were places they could perform and there were places they couldn't perform based on their color. So they were well aware of society and how society looked at them. And I think that really kind of shaped her future and how she would approach things.
And tell me about what happened to, where's the whereabouts of her Oscar?
Who knows? I mean, it's been missing for at least 50 years. It's interesting, you know, Hattie and the Black Cats, they could not go to the premiere of Gone with the Wind in Atlanta. I want to say it was December 1939. And even though they couldn't go to the premiere, there was a Black choir at the premiere that was allowed to attend and perform. And in that Black choir, and we're talking 1939, in that Black choir was a young Martin Luther King Jr. And he was about 10 years old. And he was in the choir. He was there. But Hattie couldn't be there, and she was in the film. So, I mean, think about that. So you go from 1939 to almost 30 years later in 1968 when Martin Luther King, that same little boy, was assassinated. And it created a lot of havoc, a lot of chaos in the United States. And Hattie's Oscar, which she donated to, or left in her will to Howard University in Washington, D.C., that was one of the towns that was hit the hardest by the riots of the King assassination. And sometime shortly after that, it could have been that same year, it could have been the next year, but sometime shortly after that, her Oscar vanished and hasn't been seen since. Hasn't showed up on eBay. You know, it could, I don't know, is it in somebody's basement? Is it in the Potomac lake, as someone mentioned, they threw it in the lake. I mean, there are these different theories, but it hasn't been seen since.
And the link to Martin Luther King and the Oscar is...
It's almost eerie.
Yeah.
It's that they had that strange tie in 1939 for the premiere, didn't get the chance to meet because of that. I mean, maybe they would have met, and I don't know if they would have had a conversation, but Hattie was a spiritual person, so she might have had a conversation with the choir, which was the Martin Luther King's father's choir from their church. So, and then you think 30 years later, he's assassinated. And of course, they didn't meet in that moment. So you have these bookends, these bookend events, tragic events of the two of them having a connection in an unusual way, and not the way that you would want to be connected to someone.
Do you think that she knew that she was making history?
Before or after she won the Oscar?
I mean, probably during. I mean, because how would you even know?
I think she, prior to Gone with the Wind, she had been in a few films, and her parts were more comedic, kind of slapstick screwball comedies kind of films. So Gone with the Wind was her first real dramatic piece. And she knew the film. I mean, everybody knew this film was huge. Everybody was talking about it. And so she had to have a sense that this is a big deal. This is not some small thing. And I'm sure she was nervous when she went to go audition for that part. She wanted the part badly. Clark Gable recommended her for the part. And that might be another reason why she received the part, because they were good friends before Gone with the Wind. They were in 2 prior pictures together. So they knew each other very well. Clark Gable recommended her, Bing Crosby recommended her for the part. So there were a lot of people on her side for that part.
Oh, Mammy, I'm so thin and pale, and I haven't any clothes. Scoot up the attic, Mammy, and get Elmore's old box of dress patterns.
What you up to with Miss Ellen's Portier?
You're gonna make me a new dress.
Not with Miss Ellen's Portier, not while I got breath in my body.
Great balls of fire. And my portieres now. I'm going to Atlanta for that $300, and I've got to go looking like a queen.
Part now. Was the part stereotypical? Was it the kind of part that she wanted? I think that's a 2-part answer. Of course she wanted the part, because I'm sure she felt every step up or step forward would get her and her race to another place forward. It's all about progress, and a lot of times progress can be slow. But I think in the moment she realized this was a big deal, but I don't know if she knew how big it was going to get. I don't think she realized that. Did she think she would win an Oscar? I don't think anybody could have foreseen that.
A lot of people have compared her role to Monique and Precious, and even though they're 2 complete different roles, it's kind of playing a role of the stereotype but then being rewarded for it. And that can kind of happen with people of color in so many different ways, where we step into something that isn't classed as progressive, but it's actually bringing us to the forefront, bringing us more representation and putting us in, circles that we might have not been allowed in before. So what do you think is why do you think that is? There's quite a thin line between progressiveness and kind of, pushing us back, but then kind of giving someone a seat at the table. It's such a fine line, isn't it?
Yes. I believe when, especially in her case, I think she knew she had to bite the bullet. And what I mean by that is, was it the ideal situation across the board? No. Of course, she's thinking of survival, because, we're talking about when that film was in production, the United States wasn't that far removed from the Great Depression, which was, a few years back, earlier. So I think the country was still getting over that. And think about it, the Great Depression happened, and then this film happened. And then after the Great Depression, World War II started. So this film was dropped right in the middle of the Great Depression and World War II in the United States. And so naturally she's thinking survival, as, we all want to survive and make a living and be able to take care of ourselves and be secure. And then I think the other part is she loved performing so much. And you hear the cliche, I do it for free. And there are a lot of actors who do almost work for free because they're trying to make it. But I really believe she loved performing, and she loved people. I feel once she got the part, then she probably had this realization of something bigger in mind, or with the hopes of something bigger happening. And I think when that started to happen, I'm sure that put a lot of pressure on her. There was negative pressure, and then there was a lot of praise. So she had a taste of both, and that had to be difficult, the push and pull of that.
What do you say to critics that kind of criticize the role despite her making history?
You know, gone with the wind. Yeah, let Gone with the Wind be gone with the wind. Okay. Even when she got that Oscar nomination at an Oscar award, they wrote the speech for her, the studio. You see this, like, she's crying, but there's this, they didn't even let her in the theater until right before she got that award. Someone came outside and brought her into the auditorium. She wasn't even allowed to sit in there. And then she had to read a speech that was written by the studio. You know that's not what the hell she wanted to say. And then after that, all she could do was play these same kinds of roles. The opportunities at that time and the way that those in power and in that business were relegating us and marginalizing us and not allowing us to grow and thrive after that, you know, was just terrible.
My thought is Hattie wasn't the problem. The industry was the problem. It wasn't her fault. I mean, number one, you're talking about the 1930s. Number two, you're talking about she's a woman, and women have been underappreciated since the beginning of time. Even now, I think women are underappreciated, and women have come a long way. But there are things. There's a lot of work to do, not just race but gender. So imagine she's in the 1930s, she's a woman, and then she's Black. I mean, it's just like, you put all those layers on that. It makes you, or it made me realize that, hey, we have to cut her some slack. She didn't create those parts that were given to people of color, whether you were African American, Native American, Asian, Hispanic, from India. You know, all those amazing, beautiful people were receiving parts that were not truly a correct barometer of who they were. But the parts, if you were a Black person, you were either a slave, a butler, a house cleaner, you're picking, you know, that's what you did. That was your role in the movie. Maybe you were a train porter. You weren't the leading man. You weren't the leading woman. Would Hattie have loved to be the leading woman in a movie with Clark Gable or Paul Robeson? Sure, I'm sure she would have leaped at that and took that challenge on. But that wasn't the reality at the time. I'll put it this way, there are two ways to fight an issue or a problem. One is from the inside and one is from the outside. Hattie was obviously fighting from the inside. And of course, you had people on the outside, like the NAACP or Oscar Michaud, who made films independently on the outside for a while. So Hattie, one of Hattie's quotes was, "You can fight any existing evil from the inside." So she knew she was on the inside trying to make a change. So I think she did what she could do, and she's just one person. There were other people that did a lot of amazing things too. But she was just one person, and of course, she became that target because she won the Oscar. I don't think the industry was put on the fire enough. I think Hattie was criticized more than the industry, or equal to, so I don't think that was the right way to go. But I actually admire her, or anyone in that era, for what they did and how they managed to get through it.
Yeah. Now, you spoke about Hattie's radio show, and you told me on the phone that it was originally done by white men impersonating Black people,
Right.
but then she kind of took it and made it her own. Like, it represents a tone of strength, no?
Yeah. I mean, the show, the Beulah Show, which is the show you're referring to, I believe it started in the 1940s. It could have been I'm not sure which year, but could have been the mid 40s, could have been a little earlier. But the show had been on a while on radio, and it was performed, as you just mentioned, by white actors impersonating Black people. So of course it was probably very exaggerated, very stereotypical. And one of the reasons Hattie got the part was because one of the lead actors died. One of the white gentlemen died. And they were trying to figure out how to keep the show going. And someone recommended Hattie, who was known, she had done radio before. And I guess she went and did a test, a tryout, and it turned out fine. And it turned out even better than they expected. I mean, the ratings just went through the roof because it was authentic. It was authentic, and I think people were drawn to that. And of course, years later, when it became a TV show, she was one of the actresses who played that lead part. When you have a diverse set of people and you limit the opportunities for a large group of those diverse set of people, you hurt yourself as a country. You hurt yourself as a species. There are probably a lot of things that could have been solved by now in the world if the world was more inclusive. And that one person that you deny an opportunity, whether they're Black or Native American or whatever they are, if you deny them opportunity based on where they come from, that person could have been the person who could have cured something or could have discovered something. You just don't know. And I think it's a terrible thing to limit the capabilities of the world. It's like having 5 sets or 5 groups of food in front of you, and each one of those food groups is good for you, but you only try one. So you're going to miss out on some of the nutrients or minerals over here because your particular issue with that particular thing, which really is a ludicrous thing in the first place, to even have that sensibility to want to judge something based on appearance versus character and heart.